Hello everyone. Today we're going to go ahead and talk about America and World War One. As I speak, please feel free to have your notebook out. You can make copies on your own. Um, and here we go. This is something new, so let me see if I can make this thing work. All right, so first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, we need to remember our essential question. Can a world power really follow an isolationist foreign policy? So what we're going to do is we're going to explain why the U.S. entered World War I and abandoned its isolationist policy in 1917. And we're going to see if we were really able to stick to isolationism or if we've returned to interfering with everyone else's business. All right, first and foremost, what is isolationism? It's a policy of remaining apart from the affairs or interests of other groups, especially the political affairs of other countries. In other words, it's us minding our own business. How did this differ from last week's unit of imperialism? Well, remember, last week imperialism, we were talking about going out and taking over other people's countries, and now we're talking about minding our own business. All right, so just some points to think about. This is what we would do if we were in class. But remember, the first person to really establish isolationism was George Washington. Remember, in his farewell address, he warned us to stay out of other countries' businesses. All right, so what caused World War I? Real quick, you should remember it was because of a Bosnian Serb. His name was Princip. He was a member of the Black Hand, and he wanted complete independence from Austria-Hungary and to unite with Serbia. And the thing about it is he ended up assassinating the Archduke Francis Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, because essentially Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he was going to come to power in Austria-Hungary, and they owned Serbia at the time, and he had promised that he was going to give the Bosnian Serbs more independence. Well, this kind of freaked people like Gavrilo Princip out, because Gavrilo Princip wanted complete independence from Austria-Hungary. And they were afraid that if Franz Duke Ferdinand became the new king and he made things a little easier for the Bosnian Serbs, that they wouldn't want complete independence. So essentially he said, well, you got to die, because if we let you come to power, you're going to treat the Bosnian Serbs, his people, so much better that they're not going to want to break free and declare their independence. So what ends up happening, he assassinates Archduke Franz Ferdinand one day when he and his wife come to Bosnia to give a speech, and immediately the alliance system kicked in. This should be something you remember from your world history classes, and that's why I'm not going to go into much detail. Well, essentially, Austria-Hungary was allied with Germany. Germany gives them a call and says, hey, I heard what happened. We got your back, all right? If you choose to go to war with Bosnia, we will have your back. Well, Russia was allies with Serbia. Russia calls up Serbia and says, hey, I heard what happened. If Austria-Hungary tries anything, we got your back. Now, you might be asking yourself, why Serbia? Well, the thing is, even though Gavrilo Princip came from Bosnia, he really wanted, when the Bosnians got their independence, to join Serbia, because in Serbia was made up of people that looked like looked like Gavrilo Princip, that were Bosnian Serbs. So Austria-Hungary automatically assumed that Serbia was behind it. Well, at any rate, Serbia is friends with Russia. Russia calls up Serbia and says, hey, if Austria-Hungary tries anything, we got your back. Well, France calls up Russia, and France says, hey, I heard what happened. I know that you're allies with Serbia. If you get involved, no, we got your back. So all of a sudden, you had a conflict that only involved two countries, Bosnia and Austria-Hungary, and now it's grown to include Serbia, Germany, Russia, France, all because of the alliance system. All right, so what immediately caused the war? This should be something that you remember from your world history classes. Germany is terrified that Germany is going to have to fight a two-front war, because on one side of Germany on the map, you have Russia, and then on the other hand side, you've got France. So they're afraid that they might have to fight a two-front war. So before that even happens, Germany decides, well, I'm not going to wait, because I've actually gone to war with France twice. Germany invades France, and the problem is that when Germany invades France, they go through a tiny little small country that's right on the border, and that country is known as Belgium. Now, Belgium is really, really small, and Belgium has a big brother as an ally, and that big brother is Great Britain. When Great Britain finds out that Germany went through its ally, Great Britain, calls them up and says, hey, we're going to declare war because you violated our allies' safe space. So now Great Britain is involved in the war. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So what do you have going on? Now you've got a war, and it involves one side: France, Great Britain, Russia, and Serbia. And then on the other side, you've got Central Powers, which is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. Now, you might remember from your world history class that Ottoman Empire is like Turkey, and they own a lot of colonies in the Middle East. Now, why does this involve the Ottoman Empire? This is still at the time of imperialism, and the Ottoman Empire is hoping, hey, if I can jump in this thing and I can get on the winning side, then when this war is over, I can actually, take other people's colonies, like the spoils to the winner. What does the United States do? They say, my name is Bennett and I ain't in it. They immediately declare neutrality. All right. Now, the problem is, were we really staying neutral? J.P. Morgan, you might remember him. He was the robber baron from the Gilded Age. He loaned the Allies, that's Great Britain, France, and Russia, $2.3 billion. And American factories were now selling weapons, but who were we primarily selling it to? The Allies. So the Central Powers, once again, that's Germany and Austria-Hungary, they're like, hey, y'all talking about being neutral, but you're really not being neutral. All right, well, here's the deal. Great Britain, as a battle strategy during the war, they tried to blockade Germany. If you remember from the Civil War, remember the Anaconda Plan? That's when you take your ships and you surround a country. Great Britain tries to blockade Germany because they have a great navy. And the Germans were afraid that they were going to starve and couldn't get out. So what they did is the Germans started using something that was a little new called submarine warfare. The Germans would use their U-boats, which are submarines, and they would blow up British ships that were on their coast. And that was their way to break through from the blockade. Now, here's the deal. At first, the Germans were only blowing up British ships, but the British started getting sneaky. The British actually started trying to camouflage their ships, and the way they would do that is they would fly like an American flag on their ship. So when the German U-boats would see the American flag, they'd be like, hey, that's an American ship. Leave it alone. Another thing they would do is the British, they would start taking regular passenger ships. So you know how like right now we have cruise ships like some major cruise ships. What is it, like the Escapade, or I don't know, different ships that you can take if you want to go on a cruise to other places. Well, the British would take regular passenger ships. So when the Germans would see it, they're like, oh, don't blow it up. It's not a military ship. But in actuality, they would smuggle weapons on the bottom of the ship, sometimes without even the British people knowing. Well, the Germans started getting hip to all that. So the Germans began to follow policy of blowing up any ship they saw in the water. They even warned the United States. They would tell the United States, stay out of the water. We're at war. The British are disguising their ships. The British are also, using passenger ships. So any ship that we see, no matter what flag is flying, we are going to blow it out of the water. Well, the Americans didn't really heed it because Wilson said, hey, you can't tell us not to stay out of the water. We're trading, we're making money. We need to go from one continent to the other. We need the seas. We should have freedom of the seas. Well, things came to blow. The British had a ship called the Lusitania, and the British Lusitania was a passenger ship, and it had over 2,000 people on board, and the Germans saw it and they blew it out of the water. 128 Americans were among that British ship, and Americans were angry. They demanded that Wilson, declare war on the Germans, but Wilson, tried to use a level head, and he gave them a stern warning and told them not to do it. And the Germans didn't adhere us, and they started doing it even more. They blew up 2 more ships, and I think 2 of them were American ships. Well, another thing that the Germans do that really makes it difficult for us to stay out of the war is they aren't stupid. They're like, the United States is already loaning money to the Allied powers. The United States has a close relationship with the Allied powers. It's Great Britain, it's France. And we're starting to blow up their ships. There might be a possibility that the Americans are going to join this war. So what do they end up doing? The Germans end up sending a note to Mexico. And in the note, the German Foreign Secretary Arthur Zimmerman basically said to Mexico, I know y'all hate the United States. I know you're still salty over the Mexican War. So if the United States does get involved in this war, we need to make sure that the United States stays over in the Atlantic and doesn't come over to where we are, the European side of the war. So he gives them a proposal. He says, if you attack the United States and keep them pinned down in the Americas so they can't send soldiers over to the European side, when we win World War I, we promise all the land, and it was a lot. Do you remember from the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo from the Mexican War? All that land that you lost, we will promise we'll give it back to you. Well, that was quite smart and quite enticing. Unfortunately, the British intercepted the note. And before they could actually give the note to the Mexicans, the British intercepted it, gave it to the Americans, and they are basically saying, like, hey, remember how you said that you wanted to stay out of this war? Remember how you said that you'll trade weapons with us, sell weapons to us, make some money off of us, but you don't want to get involved? Well, take a look at this note. So the Americans were quite angry about that. Another thing that convinced the United States that maybe it was time to abandon isolationism, which remember, that's our essential question, why do we abandon Washington's warning, is the Bolshevik Revolution. The Russian Tsar was overthrown over in Russia, and it became a communist country. And Americans decided, and not only that, as soon as it became a communist country, the Bolsheviks said, listen, we are losing so many people. And they were losing more people than I think any of the other countries combined during the war. They're like, it's time for us to drop out. Well, when they drop out, the United States says, all right, you know what? It's time for us to enter. And the United States, April 2nd, 1917, declares war on Germany. Now, not everybody was down with this. But Wilson, remember, Wilson is still a progressive. Remember, he was the guy that was all about moral democracy. Look to your report cards if you don't remember, y'all. And Wilson basically argued, listen, guys, I need to convince the country that, we need to get involved in this war. He said that this war was not going to be just any war. We needed to take advantage of this war because this was going to be the United States' opportunity to make the world safe for democracy. This was going to be a war where the United States was going to end all opportunities for future wars. Isn't that quite progressive? So the United States is now involved in war. I'm actually going to stop right here, ladies and gentlemen, because this was the part 1 of World War I lesson, and this is basically an explanation of why we got involved and why we abandoned our policy of isolationism. So what will happen, I'm going to upload this, and then right after I'll upload World War II, how did this transform society? It's almost like a break. If we were actually in class, we would have done the first half that I just did in one lesson, and now I'll upload a second one for the second half of the lesson. How does war transform society? That will be entitled World War I Part 2. I hope this helps, and you can use this, ladies and gentlemen, to answer the accompanying study guide questions. Take notes on it, go back, replay it a couple times if you have to. After you finish World War I Part 1 and World War I Part 2, and you finish the study guide questions, then you should move on to the little true or false quiz that'll be uploaded shortly. Hope you all are surviving. Miss you all, and stay safe. Bye.